I'm Ankit Jaipuria, founder of ZYOD.
Okay. Um, Ankit, you're like a fashion industry insider. You spent a couple of years in multiple startups in this space. Give me an understanding of the industry first. How does the industry operate? What's the legacy way, and what are the disruptions happening in this space? Who are the major players
Abso-
here? Hmm.
Absolutely. So, Akshay, if you would see, the whole fashion space is, in my understanding, two parts. One is the consumer front, which are the brands just H&M, Uniqlo, Zara, all the brands that you see day in, day out. Ek part hai, which is the dark side of it, where not a lot of people know about. It's the whole design to manufacturing phase. We have some legacy players in this field, like PDS Limited. It's a listed company. Then Gokuldas Exports. It's another listed company. These are basically the manufacturing houses, the people who are managing from conception how that design actually comes to your wardrobe. And the whole journey is where we sort of ventured as well. So,
So
what usually happens?
these
Yeah,
Gokuldas kind of companies are essentially like contract manufacturers. They will not
absolutely.
have their own brand. They will work for a Levi's or other like a Zara or someone like that. So they will manufacture as per their specifications.
Absolutely. And if you would see, and when someone goes to a store, right, if they look at the barcode tag very with detail, they will see manufactured by, and you will get to know those dark horses behind your clothes.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay. And this is like typically India has been strong in this space, I guess, textile and fashion exports. And I guess Bangladesh also is like a major player in this space.
Yeah. So
Okay.
the reason why India and Bangladesh or this east side of the world is very strong because garments is a very labor intensive process, the manufacturing of garments. So India, may you have cheap access to labor, you have cheap manufacturing supply, and we also see tailwinds. Ki this is the India's decade. So what they say, ki manufacturing, not just apparels, with all the other sectors, India is the front runner, and that shows. If Foxconn is also moving Apple's production in India, that's a testament that all the other sectors are due to follow the same suit.
Okay. In India, how much of fashion market is organized and how much is unorganized, unbranded? Like, what's the split there? These
So,
organized players like a
uh,
Zara and a H&M and a Levi's and these kinds would have what share in the market?
so India, from a demand point of view or a consumer point of view, is still fairly unorganized. If you would see, my estimate is over 85-90% of the whole market is unorganized,
Wow.
and the rest is organized. And if you would see, that's how Zudio became such a big thing. Their idea was to go to these tier two, tier three cities, get good fashion at affordable rates, and actually tap into this underserved, unorganized market. And that's
Hmm.
what is happening. My father's business is in textile, so he does unstitched clothes for your consumers. And what he has been telling that what he has seen, and he has mentioned Zudio specifically, कि Zudio के आने के बाद consumers डायरेक्ट वहां पे अपैरल्स लेने चले गए जो पहले आके नॉर्मल
Stitch कराते
दुकान
थे.
पे लेते.
Okay. Like your dad is running like a shop, retail, like that's his
So
business
yeah,
or is it wholesale?
my dad is basically into wholesale and retail of textiles. तो जो
Okay.
वो unstitched fabrics आते हैं, Raymond,
Huh.
Arvind,
Huh.
all of
Right.
that. So he
Right.
has a retail shop as well, and then he supplies to multiple retailers in Rajasthan specifically.
Okay. And in small towns, that used to be the way people would do their clothes shopping. Like they
Yeah,
would get it stitched because it was cheaper that way. And again, we labor costs and things like that. Whereas branded goods used to be expensive. Although now you're saying Zudio is, and similar players like Zudio are doing that disruption. Okay, interesting. Um, what is fast fashion, and who are the players who are doing fast fashion? What essentially makes fast fashion different from what is not fast fashion, or is everything fast fashion today?
So, see, I think the world is moving towards a faster cycle of fashion. So, how we sort of term fast fashion is specifically the whole difference in how the products have evolved over time. So, earlier, if you would see, there were just a few products which were running 24/7. Let's say a blue shirt, which was evergreen, a white shirt, a
Denim jeans. Yeah.
polo with a horse. You wear it 24/7, 365 days a year. So these were called core fashion. And then you have fashion SKUs. These are SKUs which are changing with every season. So 7, 8 years back, there were primarily two seasons, summer and winter. These are my summer clothes, these are my winter clothes. With time, what has changed now, it is summer, spring, pre-fall, back to school, winter, and what that has resulted in, the core SKUs, which were the main share of a brand's launch, it is now shifting towards fashion SKUs. And these fashion SKUs, because they are changing with every season, which is also increasing from just two summer and winters to now six, seven, spring, summer, all of that, the SKUs are being refreshed at a much faster rate. So
But just for like a layman, an SKU is basically just one item in your cart,
one
like
item
essentially.
like the
Like, it stands for
jacket that
stock
you're
keeping
wearing is
unit.
one
हाँ,
SKU
ठीक है.
of one
Hmm,
style, in simple words.
ठीक है.
So
Okay.
that style is being refreshed at a much faster rate.
Hmm.
And this transition from just one, two seasons and few products to multiple products launched every time at a much frequent rate, this is technically fast fashion, the buzzword that you hear.
Zara was supposed to be the pioneer in fast fashion, right? I mean, about a decade or
Yes.
two back. What did they do differently? They started launching much faster pace of SKUs. Like
Yeah.
every month or something like that, they would have new SKUs getting launched.
Yeah, so that was the success mantra behind Zara. So their idea was if you go into a store, you will not find the same products every time. So every couple of months, their whole store was filled with new fresh SKUs. And that
Okay.
created that buzz that, okay, this is a Zara product. And there was a sense of exclusivity as well because
And
you are not doing
fear of
something.
missing out also. Like if I don't buy this now,
Yeah,
it will not be interesting.
absolutely. That
Okay.
FOMO sort of
Hmm.
created that. Key in agent or enabler in Zara's journey
Hmm.
towards becoming so big.
And what is Shane, which is like the biggest disruptor today that everyone is afraid of?
So what Shein did technically was what Zara was doing in 45 days, 60 days. Shein said, let's do it in 7 days. So
Wow.
Shein became that ultra fast fashion player that why not stick to just some SKUs in a month? We will launch every week, every day. And that has been the key driving factor behind Shein's launch, that they created very low price points so that the barrier to entry to buy new products is not a lot, and they would do it at a mammoth pace every day, every week, new launch, new collections.
How how did they do this and still remain profitable? From what I understand, the big problem in the fashion space is your like whatever is not sold in that specific season, you end up taking a hit. Like that brings your margin down. Like if you manufactured 100 jackets and 40 remained unsold, then that's like a direct hit on your margin. So how did Sheen manage to be profitable, have so many SKUs, reduce the cost for the customer? How are they doing all of this?
So basically, what happened, the whole manufacturing side. Let's now deep dive into that because that will give us the understanding what actually was different between a traditional player, what Zara did, and what Shein did, which was basically everything on steroids. So earlier it was volume based, low cost sourcing. So people used to buy a lot, or brands used to launch tens and thousands of one style, and because of volumes, they were looking to reduce their cost to improve their P&L. But that resulted in a lot of inventory losses, which was one of the biggest problems that brands face. There is a word that there is a line in this industry that inventory kills brands.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
that was the major factor. What she did specifically, they took an approach where they will not launch hundreds and thousands of style, or hundreds and thousands of pieces per style, but small patches and a higher width. So high width, low depth was the mantra behind Sheen's launch. What they used to do, they were once they used to launch these small batches, they were able to capitalize on the market trends, which SKUs are working well, which are not working well, and double down on the better performing styles. So, what that technically resulted in, they were able to launch a lot of styles. They were not launching huge quantities of poor performing styles. So, they didn't have a lot of inventory losses. And then they used to double down on attributes which were working and create similar styles which were in line with the market need. And hence, they were showing what the consumer wanted, and they were able to capitalize on those revenues.
Fascinating. So essentially, the product management philosophy is what they applied. Like as a product manager, you are constantly doing A/B testing, and so it sounds like Sheen is doing A/B testing at scale for clothes. Like just 100 of a specific SKU, and if it is selling well, then they scale it up. If it's not selling, then there's no big loss because you just did a lot of 100. And the other thing, you told me that they're looking at what attributes are working and then doubling down, which means that they must have a very sophisticated data operation, where everything which is selling would not just be that a shirt is selling. Would maybe they would say a shirt of this color, this fashion. There must be multiple attributes which they would be then analyzing to come to some sort of a pattern that this is what is popular in like this is the fashion today. Like people want a high neck, or people want a Chinese collar, or whatever. That's how they are able to scale up so fast. I also guess the other thing they're doing different is they're pure online, right?
Yes, I think they have started to put in some stores, which was in the
Okay.
pipeline, but
Okay.
predominantly online.
Okay. Which again, compared to a Zara, which has to run stores, that again cuts down their cost, and so all
Yeah.
of this cost they are passing on to the consumer. So while you can go and see your jacket before you buy at Zara, but at Shein it's so cheap that you feel like even if it's not a great buy, I can still take the risk. I guess that's what must be happening with a lot of shopping that happens on Shein, like because
No, you
all that
absolutely
cost
coined
is
it
passed on.
very well.
Hmm. Fascinating. Okay. So, what got you into fashion as a uh, like your business is in the space of fashion? One is, of course, you have that family connection, but what actually got you into fashion? Because I saw on your LinkedIn you were a management consultant. How did a
Yeah.
management consultant get into fashion?
No, I think sometimes something is in your destiny. Even if you run away from it, you sort of get into it. So, born in fashion family, because of so much hassle that I had seen during my childhood, I personally never actively planned to go in that. Then somehow took mechanical engineering, learned about supply chain operations. Then I actually interned in ITC as well during my college days. So again, my intern was into hardcore manufacturing operation. And while I was doing management consulting, this was the time where COVID had struck and there was lockdown.
Yeah. What kind
So
of projects were you doing? You were at Booz Allen Hamilton, right, as a
yeah,
consultant.
so
And
I
what
was
kind of
at
work?
Booz. I was primarily doing work across three sectors, which was maritime, oil and gas, and retail. So I started with a maritime project for a Dubai-based port operator company. So
And
we
there's
were
like
planning
operational efficiency was the end goal.
uh, in this, it was like a multi-fold project where operational efficiency was one. It was more on the lines of mergers and acquisition, how we can acquire multiple ports and build that for the overall growth of the business.
Okay.
Then I worked with a retail company which was more on the lines of their top stores program. So some of their stores were getting the biggest revenue. So it was a cosmetic based uh, company based out of India. So how we can elevate those top stores. And then once COVID had struck, the overall time that I was getting for myself was also more. Consulting was also a little slow. People were not spending a lot on consultants at those times. And then I actually stumbled upon Fashionza. So if I tell you how it sort of started, I was in Jaipur, my hometown, and one of the founders of Fashionza, Abhishek, was the person. He was also in Jaipur. So Jaipur being a hub of garments, Fashionza used to have operations there. So
And what was
he said,
Fashiza doing at that time? This
so
is
Fashionza
2021, you're saying.
Yeah. So Fashionza was primarily a B2B sourcing company. Their idea was there are global brands and there are manufacturers, specifically in the east part of the world, which is the hub for manufacturing. And there is a lot of vacant capacities with manufacturers. For example, India's average capacity utilization for garment manufacturers, the SME garment manufacturers, is about 33-32%. And
Oh
if you
wow.
would see that there are 80,000 SME manufacturers, these are manufacturers having less than 100 machines, so very small setups. So there was a lot of vacant capacity in the Indian ecosystem and the whole East continent as such. And there were brands who wanted to sort of need help or need to discover reliable manufacturers. So that was the thought behind Fashionza. We'll become a marketplace in between and ensure these brands are able to discover these reliable suppliers, and these suppliers would be able to get your consistent demand, reliable demand, and grow their business. So there were traditional players doing that. So there were players like Lee and Fung at the time. So they are called traditional buying houses. So buying houses are basically brands working with a licensing office or a middleman who is basically channelizing, coordinating for a brand sitting in the West for the East continent. So
Mm.
that was the whole sort of structure. The idea Fashionza was solving was primarily on the lines of why not disrupt it using technology. It's still very manual. People are talking through mails, phones, and there is a long lead time of 90, 120, 150 days. So a technological solution to manage this coordination between brand and manufacturer is where the disruption was. So I met Abhishek in Jaipur. He said, and as founders do, Abhishek said, "Oh, I'm in Jaipur. Let's meet for lunch." I was like, "Okay, I'm free. I have no plans. Let's meet." So we connected a lot. I think that day we didn't speak anything about fashion. We were talking about our old IIT Delhi days. So he was a IIT Delhi senior, and we were talking about our library, what we used to do. There was a place called Wind Tunnel, which was basically a hangout spot. After every seminar or class, we used to sit there, chit chat with our peers. So we talked about that. We gelled a lot, and I was like, I was always passionate about doing business. Fashion as a space is something that I have seen from my childhood. And I think all the stars were meeting where my mechanical engineering experience, my manufacturing experience, we meeting in Jaipur over lunch. And I thought, let's take that move. And at that time, joining a seed stage company or a startup for that for sorts was also not very common. Shark Tank was not live.
Mm.
So my parents were like, which
Yeah,
is
I
the
mean, like
company?
management consulting is like the dream job, right? You were essentially
Yeah.
quitting the dream job to join an unknown startup at that stage. Yeah, I get it. Hmm.
So I remember that conversation. So my mother asked me कि कब company start हुई? मैंने बोला अभी launch हुई है. I would be like one of the first few employees there.
Hmm.
So they were not able to digest. Obviously, Shark Tank played a very good role over the years, and people are now more active towards startup. But yeah, that was the sort of thought process behind my joining fashion. And I joined in the founder's office. So I was there to solve everything and all the problems that used to come. Earlier, it was primarily focused on how we can standardize the operations. So when I joined, we were
One
working with
question:
a.
Fashiza would follow like a Oyo Rooms model, like Oyo Rooms takes inventory of hotels, gives it their own branding, manages the revenue, and like the end consumer thinks he's checking into a Oyo Rooms, although it's not Oyo's own property. Was it something like that, where the brand thinks that they're buying from Fashiza, and Fashiza is then getting it done through these SMEs? Or was
So,
it that the brand knows
yeah,
that I'm working with these SMEs?
so I would say, see, Fashionza had a full stack approach that from a brand's POV, they would be supplying and billing the goods.
Okay,
There
got it.
was transparency that it was done through a third
Asset
party.
light. Yeah, got it.
That's how a buying house sort of used to work as well, where
Okay.
brands used to give orders to the buying house. The
Hmm.
sole responsibility to execute it was for buying house, but the customers knew that this is a middleman licensing office
Got it.
and they are
Okay.
coordinating with
Hmm.
folks. And that was the essential uh, part of the business where brands had so many things to solve. They said, you look after my back end supply chain. So they didn't really care who is at the back end because the trust was in the middleman
Buying house.
licensing office or
Right.
fashions in our case.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Hmm. And in Fashionza, you were part of one of their initiatives, right? Like a startup within a startup. How did that happen?
So, what was happening through that whole journey? So, first, I was in the supply part. So, my idea was to expand supply. I was looking after expanding the whole or building that playbook that how we can expand the supply and then looking after the whole supply chain operations. Then we went into our fundraising, which I was very much involved in that gave me a whole bird's eye view of the industry, how the industry was working, what are the players. Then those names like Sheen came up. And at that time, this was one defining sort of factor that we need to create something which was the fast fashion which we talked about. So this discovery model, this buyer supplier connect that was already being done at Fashioner, we wanted to why not create a supply chain only focused on fast TAT, low MOQ. So TAT is the turnaround time from
Hmm.
design to delivery, how fast we can do it, where the market is at 6 months, can we do it in a less time? And minimum order quantities, MOQs. It was basically brands were struggling with inventory losses. They were being forced to buy thousands to thousand pieces. Why not give them small quantities to the likes of 1,500 pieces? So that was the thought process that let's create a new kind of supply chain which gives 50 MOQs and 21 days lead time. That was the starting thought. I also connected a lot with Ritesh. Ritesh is my co-founder. He was the founding member of Fashionza. So He and Abhishek, they were childhood friends. They had done few startups together. Then fashion was something which Ritesh was already involved in. So he was, prior to Fashionza, he had his own brand, ethnic wear brand called Yufta, which was both on primarily doing online sales and some B2B sales. And then he was one core member to sort of launch Fashionza. And that time we connected very well that this sounds very disruptive. He had actually worked with Sheen when Sheen was not banned in India as well. So
Okay.
he was one of the suppliers back in the days, a few years back, where he had supplied to Sheen for a few orders in a year before Sheen got banned. So he was also very excited about Sheen, and surprisingly, he was also from Jaipur. So we used to travel a lot together, given that we were from the same cities. There was a lot of connecting points, and we decided, okay, this is a very interesting problem that we need to solve for. And we discussed this with the founders, Pawan, Abhishek, and we decided let's do it as a startup within a startup. And by that, UCOM was launched. So we created a separate team, separate office to sort of run this idea to create this fast supply chain where in 6 months of journey, we scaled to about $500,000 in a month. And we realized when we started this, everyone was uh, looking at us as a disbelief that we are working at a 6 month cycle, 21 days is not possible. I remember there was one brand, Shararat, if I'm not wrong, a small D2C brand. We delivered our first goods in 18 days.
Wow. Hmm.
And I think that sort of showed if you want to do this ultra fast supply chain, Sheen has already done it on scale. You have done it in India as a proof of concept. Because technically, if you would see, cutting takes 1 day, stitching takes 2, 3 days, finishing, packing. If you add up the actual process times, you just see it's like 8, 10 days of operations while we are taking 6 months. So theoretically on paper everything was uh, easy or achievable, but practically because it has been done in such a way over decades, it's an old industry that we are talking about, that disruption in the mindset was also required. So that was the whole starting point of UCOM. The UCOM started growing really well in that time. And then we sort of realized it is not a small project, it's a whole company that we have to sort of run and build. And that's how we sort of decided that now we have to actually relook at things and restart this because from a small idea, it scaled very fast.
Uh,
Uh,
so you said 500,000 monthly revenue. What percentage of Fashionza's revenue would that be? Like, was it a single digit percentage or was it a meaningful percentage?
It was not a significant percentage with respect to the overall revenue.
Like 5,
Fashion
10%,
was,
something like that.
yeah, it was in single digits,
Okay.
low single digits. In fact, Fashion was doing a huge business at that time. Uh, I think the idea was, but it was becoming significant.
Hmm.
It was something which you will not unnotice.
So
And
why aren't you running UCOM within Fashionza today?
I think there were two primary reasons for the same. First, what we started with an idea that we are in the same industry and it will give us some benefits, some cross learnings. I think that was very different because the two business models were very different.
The
Uh,
customer segment would be very different, I'm guessing. Like, say, you
Yes,
told me this
at that time
Shararti.
we were working with SMEs, small D2C players.
Hmm.
Fashion at that time was primarily with enterprises. And I think more or less the whole business model. One is a manufacturing led business where we are creating Oreos and myriads of apparel manufacturing. And another is a marketplace, make my trip sort of business. So that whole business model, though was in the same industry, the whole process to execute it was very different. And that was an understanding right from the start because when we were doing UCOM, we had actually opened a new office in a different location. There was a whole new different team sort of built from zero to one. So one was that. Secondly, I think at that point, fashions are being still very early in the journey of its whole inception, and running one more company under a bigger umbrella was also not
Distraction.
the wisest of the thought, and it was a distraction.
Hmm.
So that's why we decided in the longer run it would be wise that we sort of move out. Otherwise, it would become more complex and would not lead in good of any of the companies.
Got it. Uh, what does the margin profile look like for the buying house? Essentially, from what I understand, buying house is like a decades-old business, which
Mhm.
now fashions are UCOM are essentially a digital technology-enabled avatar. Uh, what kind of margin does the buying house keep in this? Like, if a brand is selling a jacket for 10,000 rupees, how much would the brand have bought it for? Yeah, and out of that buying price, how much would have actually gone to the manufacturer? How much to the buying house? Rough estimate.
Yeah. So, see, the good thing, Akshay, about this industry is, and I would say it's a two-edged sword. Your strength and weakness is the same thing. SKUs or the style is not standardized. So, what that results in as a weakness that your operations need to be so adaptable that you are able to take care of this changing SKUs. The other side of it is because there is no standardization of your style, the margins are uncapped. So from fabrics to your final garments, this industry commands 60 to 70% gross margins. How
So
the
you're saying
whole
60 to 70% at each step, like the
the
brand gets
overall
60
margins,
70%, or okay,
no,
okay.
the overall margins
Hmm.
from fabric to final selling price of the garments to the brands.
Okay,
With buying houses, uh, the margins vary from 10 to 25, 30%.
okay.
Obviously, it depends primarily on the style as well. So
Hmm.
let's say if you're doing a commodity style like a white t-shirt, which is more commoditized in nature, you will be at the lower spectrum of that. If you're doing a very exclusive SKU, let's say a dress with a lot of frills, which is not a commodity in nature, you will be able to command higher margins. PDS or Li and Fang, these traditional buying houses, they were operating at 15, 20% on an average
Okay,
at the
okay, okay,
at
okay.
their peak scale.
Got it. Got it. So if you're doing like say 10 million in sales, then about a 2 million ish would be the gross margin that at scale one would expect. Okay, fairly profitable. Okay, understood. Then what next? When you decided that you need to do it on your own, how did that journey start? Did you need funds to start, or
So what happened at that time? So September, October was the time we decided we need to sort of part ways and sort of close this up. And at that time, it was actually um uh, not so expected change as well. You are building something with so much passion and heart, and then you sort of come to the conclusion that you have to actually sort of close this. So the next 2, 3 months from September, October were primarily focused upon sort of keeping UCOM as a brand alive, and we were handing it over and merging it with the Fashionza main vertical. And December, it took the complete December of the same to sort of do it. And at that time, actually, me and Ritesh, we had not planned that we would do this again or we would do all of it. And we had about 35 people who were working in UCOM, which was also one sort of responsibility because when you start a company, you are basically not just working towards an idea, you have people who are uh, financially dependent on the same. So we had 35 folks as well, uh, who where their future was not defined. They were like, what next? There was nothing. It was completely black for us and for them as well. Then uh, I think it was late December when me and Ritesh were sort of were having a chat. I think it was some evening or we were in Jaipur, I remember. And that day we sort of come to 2 points in summary of that conversation. One, I think this is something that we need to do because it's not for us, it's for India as well. Because it's the right time. India is being looked at as a reliable place for global apparel supply chain, and it's bigger than all of us. And people are in need of this. That's why we scaled so fast. Secondly, I think it was a moral responsibility that we were feeling that it's something that we would need to do with all the 35 people that we were working with. And I think what happened next, we sort of discussed this internally with the 35 UCOM people. We told them that, see, this is the situation that UCOM, as you guys know, is now shutting down and we are in the process of transfer. We would be running a business for this fast fashion supply chain. We don't know the name yet. We don't know how we would do it. But this is something we started and we feel really passionate about it. And it's up to you. You have two options. One, you can help us and continue doing what we have already done. Or if you need any help, me and Ritesh will leave no stone unturned to find you a good job. To our surprise, all 35 folks said, let's do this. We'll see how it will happen. We promise them one thing that if we are able to secure any funds, anything, we would be uh, ensuring that you don't suffer financially anytime. And in 3 months, we will have anyways clarity. Internally, me and Ritesh, we decided I'll move to Jaipur. I talked that I will put one land on lease, get some loan out of it, put some money together, and we would start the same. So that is how January ZYOD came into inception.
How much money did you then invest, like by putting your land on lease and all that? Like,
So I'll tell you what happened at that time, Akshay. So my idea was by putting land on lease, I would be able to get 40, 50 lakhs. But fortunately, I will thank this to the startup ecosystem and how we were able to find few angels. There was one specific angel that we found. His name is Nikhil Bandarkar, one of uh, our angel investors, as well as one of my mentors as well in this whole journey. So what happened at that time? We were actually now going that we need some funds and we need to build the business. And we were having conversations with Lightspeed, which eventually became our seed investor as well. And while we were having this conversation, Nikhil, uh, he actually was excited about the idea. He really liked what we were trying to build and the whole journey. And he actually uh, gave us a loan when the company was not registered. He had to transfer the money in one of our
personal? Okay.
uh, family's business account,
Hmm.
and we actually started our operations through that. And fortunately, at that time, the Lightspeed uh, also got excited and things were going well in track, and they were also onboarded as the seed partner. Our process usually takes 2 to 3 months after the whole uh, agreement, those documentations. Lightspeed also gave some uh, amount, about $500,000, once the company got registered. So the banks and everything got registered end of January. And at that time, Lightspeed also gave us some part of the amount that they had invested so that we can continue running the operations. From the loan that we had taken, first month we ensured everyone gets their salary, that now it's all sorted, let's move and start building this. And then rest is history. We kept on building that out.
So you had a global thesis on day one that you will do fast fashion. You will build a fast fashion supply chain for global brands, or you started with domestic and then went global.
See, the idea was that everyone needs a solution of agile fashion or fast fashion, because inventory losses was profound, not just domestically, internationally, everywhere. And the second thesis that we had was that China plus one is the real thing now. India is at the forefront of it, and the whole ecosystem around you is, anyways, uh, still not the best if we compare India, especially from a government political stability as well. Sri Lanka, economic dollar crisis. Bangladesh was also going through turmoil. We recently saw the whole political fiasco which happened. So, global uh, theme was always there. Initially, we started with domestic because that was the first entry where we can meet the clients, pitch them, sell the idea, sell the vision, and slowly we kept on building on from that.
Okay, okay. The vision was essentially like what you told me: 21 days, minimum order quantity of 50, like to be able to deliver that.
So the idea was there were a lot of learnings when we uh, were doing UCOM, or we were running UCOM. What we realized were three major things that we have to focus upon to solve the problem. The problem from fast fashion technically now boiled down to one word, which was inventory loss. We have to solve for this. So that became the problem that we need to solve for from a demand point of view. From a supply point of view, we took a three-pronged approach towards it. That turnaround time is one major lever, that we would have to do it fast. So now it's from 6 months to 6 weeks, which we are focused
Okay.
upon. The MOQs have to be adaptable and agile. So we have to offer brands whatever they can sell. So it was not fixated on doing just 50 or doing some piece. It was doing what the brands want. For example, Akshay, if you start your brand, probably 50 would also be a high number. But let's say if you are a Zara, probably 1,000 would be a lower number for you. So our
Right.
idea was to solve for inventory losses and build our supply chain in a way where we can solve for that. And third was becoming a one-stop shop from designs to delivery. So which means instead of just focusing on manufacturing, we have to be the whole design to delivery, whole suit solution player, where we are not just helping them with manufacturing, but also giving them design inputs, creating our own designs, and offering them a one-stop shop where they can pick and choose and launch their collections from.
So a traditional buying house like Lee and Fung, do they also do design? Do they have designers?
So I would say these traditional buying houses, uh, their focus also moves towards design to expand their margins. So PDS is a very good example, which is a similar player like Li and Fang, where they were very much focused on design because the more you focus on designs, the better you are able to capitalize on those fashion SKUs and hence higher margins.
Okay, right. Yeah, you don't want to be just supplying white t-shirts. You want to
Yeah,
supply frilly dresses, and it is much easier to supply frilly dresses if you have in-house design strength. So for the
absolutely.
brand which comes to you, it's a lot easier for them. Okay, interesting. I guess this is pretty much the China philosophy, right? Like, say, a lot of these, like, say, a boat and these kind of D2C brand would have started like this only. Like, somebody in China would have given them the entire design, the way it looks, everything would have been done for them before they, maybe at scale today, they would be doing all of this in house. But all these D2C brand must have started like that, I guess.
No, yeah, I think that was also how Sheen also became such a big player because they also were able to source ready designs from the Gongzhou market in China, where
Okay.
manufacturers used to create those designs. And to your surprise, Akshay, it is something which India also was doing in the ethnic category. So manufacturers who are creating these kurtis, especially for these unorganized market, they are creating their own designs and own styles, which they offer to customers and they pick and choose and launch from. So India was not far off from China in the model and the thought process. It was just that it was not expanded into the Western category, which we as ZYOD wanted to become an agent of to transition this to this global trends of design standards of Western products, shops, dresses, and so on and so forth.
Okay, got it. What categories are you largely operating in?
So obviously, women's becomes one major category. So women's wear is the category that we started with and is one of the uh,
And women's wear,
biggest
ethnic,
share,
Western? What?
both.
Okay.
So we are doing both these categories. Then, as we were scaling, we expanded into men's, specifically shirts, and kids wear as well. So now we are across these categories.
And how much of your revenue is domestic? How much is global?
So you see, it depends on a quarter to quarter basis, but uh, our domestic revenues can range from 50 to 60, 65%. Obviously,
Okay.
sometimes the whole changes before festive season in India, the domestic demand would be high. But let's say before Christmas and the whole period of uh, year-end holidays, Western share would be high. So 45 to 65 70% is where domestic varies, and the rest 30 to about 40 50 is your international share.
And what are the dominant countries? Like
So
US?
our most dominant countries would be Japan, UK, Middle East, and US. These four.
Like you supply to Uniqlo, is it? Like, I'm assuming if you said Japan, then Uniqlo would be the biggest
Not
here.
Uniqlo at the moment, but there are a lot of major brands in Japan. So there are a few brands like Urban Research. So they have like multiple stores all across Japan. We supply to that. And then there are group companies like Reliance by the name of Adastria. So that's like a Reliance of Japan. So they have multiple brands under them.
Okay, got it. Okay, interesting. Uh, so, what is the role of tech in this?
Everything from designs to delivery, as I say. So the first, I would break tech into two parts. One is the design, the other is your operations management. So the designs is specifically where we have broken down that subjective styles into objective attributes. And with those objective attributes, we are doing two things. One is predictive analytics. So we are able to sort of profile for a particular consumer that these are the attributes which are working, and we should curate on that basis, give us design recommendations, or that's a recommendation engine. We recently worked upon generative designs as well because we were getting so many attributes. Why not create from a sketch to a final garment using our whole data set that we have created. So that was one part. The second was because of technology, we were also able to break that style into components. So imagine how a modular kitchen works or a modular way of working. You have different components, and we are able to optimize each leg of operations on that. So anything in the company from, let's say, the first part, which is uh, cutting, to the last part, which is packing. So there are some major steps. Your major raw material is your fabric, which comes in house. Then you cut that fabric into a specific pattern. For example, the hoodie that I'm wearing. So you see the stitch. So
Yeah.
these are six different pieces of fabric sewn together to make this hoodie. So cutting those fabrics into those components, then stitching them together, finishing it, ironing it, packing it. So every step is broken down into that component of the style, and that component of the style helps us estimate the timelines, also the possible quality gaps that would be there in a specific component for a specific brand. So you are able to optimize the whole operations as well through tracking those data sets of each components. The moonshot that we are currently focused upon is the automation. So as I coined the whole term, the whole industry was reactive. First, we made it proactive by bringing everything together in the central ERP, then using that data set to make it predictive. And then the final leg is making it automated, where we will bring in automations across different legs of or stages of the life cycle of the whole manufacturing of apparel and create further efficiencies out of that.
Okay. 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 Interesting. Um, what is the part of technology which is helping in the actual manufacture by your SME partners? What do they experience? Like
So,
these.
Akshay, how we see ourselves as brains of manufacturing, and we see our manufacturing partners as the executing arms. So, what was happening traditionally, the factory owner used to work, manage each and everything. As we discussed, that the styles are not standardized. So, there are different operations, different instructions that needs to be done. So that factory owner used to plan all the styles on a piece of paper, or if he's a little advanced, he would be using an Excel worksheet. And he used to plan and give instructions on ordering the raw materials, then what needs to be put in cutting, what is the next step of stitching if something goes off, what needs to be done. What we did with the whole leg works, we actually targeted the grassroots level folks, the quality in charge, the merchandiser who is actually managing the production floor. And basis that we started giving them their daily rosters in simple words. That if you're doing 10 styles, uh, in 5 styles, you have to do cutting today. In 3 styles, you have to do stitching. Then in the remaining 2 styles, you have to pack and dispatch. So daily, these folks who were executing at the factory floor, they only need to sort of log in their portal, the ERP that we have given. We will give them instructions. This is the task that you have to do, which will fit in the longer term plan of the whole product life cycle, and they just have to execute. So the whole hassle of managing such a complex supply chain, which was done manually through that factory owner, is now being done through technology. And that creates that delight factor for the partners that we are working with, because earlier they were occupied in the day-to-day hassle. Now their time is freed up, which basically technically makes them investors in ZYOD. So they have to invest in putting the capex, putting the machines, and we would help them run end to end.
Okay. Typically, your SME manufacturing partner is 100% with you, or like is it excess capacity utilization?
So, see, what we realized was we have to be the major player for that. So, in almost most of the manufacturers, we are the 100% wallet share. There would be few where we will be like 50, 60%, but on an average, it's over 70, 80% if I take the whole spectrum. So, we are
Ah,
one of the major players. That's
okay.
why we are able to control those processes at such a strong rate compared to just passing on the orders and leaving for them to execute.
And I guess once a manufacturer signs up with you and he sees steady revenue, timely payment, all of those benefits coming in, then it also incentivizes him to invest in scaling his capacity. So
Oh,
you are.
absolutely.
Mm,
So we
okay.
have two things in this. One, not just steady revenues, but also the whole hassle that has gone away. There are some factories where owners are coming just once a week for a couple of hours, where they were involved for 14 hours a day and still things were spilling over. Secondly, there were factories which started with just 30, 40 machines, and now there are 100 plus machines, and that's dedicated with ZYOD because they saw that consistent growth in revenue.
By machine, you mean the sewing machine?
The swing machines.
Okay, okay, okay. Fashion still happens through like that human labor intensive process, like tailors sitting on sewing machines and stitching stuff. Like
Yes,
it's
yes.
not it's
So
not a
that's a very labor intensive.
like a factory setup with a manufacturing plant. That's not how it happens.
No, no, I most of the manufacturing uh, across the globe is a stitching machine, a person behind stitching machine stitching
Wow.
the clothes.
Wow. Okay. Do you see that getting like impacted by technology?
See, there are certain leaps and bounds in some parts. For example, there are automated machines for, let's say, a standard white or standard t-shirt, round neck t-shirt, or some parts of the shirts where you have some automation built in. But most of the SKUs or styles which are not standardized, it still requires intricate stitching techniques, which still is artisanal and labor intensive. How I have seen technology from a hardware perspective come into picture where there are IoT enabled stitching machines defining the tension, defining the stitch per inch, how fast the cloth would be moving from that needle. So these are being standardized using technology, but still it's very nascent and not very popular, especially in the mass market.
Yeah, I guess the premium for such an IoT machine would not be appealing today. The
Yes.
and again, I mean, labor arbitrage India can afford, so it makes sense. Okay, interesting.
I think it's
Um,
crucial as well. I think after construction, textiles and apparels is the largest or highest employment generating industry in India. So it's a very
okay.
critical industry for any government, especially India.
Hmm. What's the hard thing about this business of uh, the like the grass is always greener on the other side, and someone might listen to this podcast and say, wow, 20% margin, I should also get into this. uh, do you have some warning for such people that this is not as easy as it seems? What are the hard things in this business?
I think wherever you see a high margin profile, there is a lot of story behind that, that it must be difficult because you only get margins if something is difficult. So
True.
in this industry, if you would see from a manufacturing perspective, demand, operations, and finance, you have to solve all these three elephants. It's not like a SaaS business where you get yearly contracts and then you don't have to work upon getting new demand. Every season, every order, every month, you have to discuss with brands, showcase styles, and get those orders. So you have to work on demand every month, every minute. Then
Okay,
comes
so
operations.
you're constantly competing with other vendors to for those brands, because that brand can buy their inventory from you are one among many vendors. There is no the stickiness is low. Essentially, you have to
I would not
constantly.
say stickiness is low
Huh.
because there is a lot, as we have discussed, the operations are so complex. It's a very sticky industry. Brands don't change their suppliers very easily. But the
Okay.
idea is that brand is working with some top five, six suppliers. See, no brand would work with just
Okay.
one player. You don't
Right.
put your eggs in one basket. So you will have five, six, seven players as core suppliers or strategic suppliers to a brand. So you would always be there as a customer, but the effort goes in creating those designs, creating those styles at a much frequent rate, which actually is taking a lot of time. You don't have those surety that you can have peace about it. If you are not creating designs, you would not secure a large amount, or you would not seek that growth very organically if you are not working on designs.
Okay. So by to ensure share of wallet, you have to constantly have a pipeline of designs for your customers. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Then
Got
you
it.
have operations, and don't get me started about it. I can sort of rant about it all day, all night. Because, see, the thing that we discussed is, which we covered, it's a labor intensive industry. See, you are dealing with thousands of laborers working behind a stitching machine, and not just stitching machine, people at cutting, people at finishing. And it's not like you have everything in one place where raw materials, they are coming from a whole different industry where you have multiple points there, from fiber converting into yarn, yarn converting into weaved fabric or knitted fabric, and that knitted fabric going into chemical processes, and these are all scattered across multiple places. Then you are coordinating across each and every step of the value chain, and then it comes inside the factory where you also have 10 more steps where there are multiple change of hands. So when you have so many change of hands and a long supply chain process, it comes with a lot of challenges which you can expect, and which are sometimes not in your expectations as well. For example, in monsoon, there was rains which were non-stop. You cannot have proper dyeing because it's rains happening. Your cloth is not able to dry properly. So there are these problems, these challenges, which come in and go throughout the leg of the operations. And to top it all, you have to solve it every time with every different design. It's not
Hmm.
one solution fits all.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. How big is your this team which is managing the operations? You would have
So
got
currently,
coordinators, I guess. Hmm.
so currently we are overall 100 people, uh, give or take a few, in the organization. I think in operations we would have about 20, 25 people, but I consider the supplier partners and the as my extended arms, and if I count them, we will have 1,000 plus folks who are running day in, day out in ZYOD operations.
Ah, okay, okay, okay. Like the with the manufacturer, he would also have like a quality control guy. That okay,
Yes.
okay, okay. And so, how do you ensure the consistency of the product? And before that, actually, the first question is: if there is a problem with the final product, is it the manufacturer's loss? Who eats that loss?
So, Akshay, there are a lot of measures that have been taken, not just by us, but traditionally in the industry as well, to avoid such situations. Because if a product is being made incorrectly, it's not just a loss of the of the entity that's making that, but also the customer or the brand, because they are losing out on potential sales.
Right,
So
because then
both brands,
the delivery gets
yeah,
delayed.
yeah, the delivery gets delayed. So both brands and manufacturers, they have multiple checkpoints of inline, midline. So inline is basically when the style is under stitching, they are checking before the style is uh, put into manufacturing. All fabrics are being checked, approved in order to avoid that case. So most of that is mitigated there. I think the industry average is somewhere about 2.5%
Okay.
for the overall rejections. But yeah, outliers can be there when, uh, due to unforeseen circumstances, there is a big sort of loss. In the business model that we are in Zyod, uh, technically, legally, that lies down to the manufacturer who's working with us. But more on the operation side, see, as I said, we are a very strategic player to that manufacturer as well. So we would leave no stone unturned to rectify it or use that to sell to some other customer if that's uh, permissible in that situation. So we would
Mm,
not uh, operationally pass it on. Legally, technically, yes, that's how the whole business model is.
got
But
it. Okay. Okay.
operationally, you have to take care of both your suppliers and brands together.
And I guess this is where the tech would come in, like the inline and these quality checks. Probably someone would be taking a photo, and that photo would go to the brand for approval, and like all of that
Yes,
process
yes.
must
So
be
there are photos that goes in and out. Then there are physical samples. You create one piece just to sort of ensure that this is what the final requirement is, which is called PP sample, pre-production sample. So
okay.
that's basically a replica of how the whole shipment would look like.
Mm. Like a prototype. Okay. 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 Interesting. Mm. Okay. Uh, what is and how big is your tech team?
My tech team would be about 15 to 18 people at the moment.
Okay, okay, fairly sizable. Are you using AI for this quality control things and all? Like, can an AI look at a photo and detect that there is a problem with this?
So that's certainly that's what is in our pipeline. We have not come to the quality part yet, but for predictive analytics from the operations, we are using AI on the design part of recommendation engine or finding similar designs through an image or creating a final garment from a scratch from a sketch. That's something that we have already built and working upon.
Like visualization for your clients, so that clients can visualize what it'll look like and stuff like that.
Yeah, so that's there, and also the predictability in the overall operations.
Mm. Okay, okay, okay. Interesting, interesting. So, what is you've raised about, I guess, 20 million so far, right?
Yeah, about 3.5 in our seed round and about 18 million in our Series A, so 21.5.
21 million. Okay. Okay. What did you need the funds for? There's 18 million is a fairly large round. What did you need these funds for?
I think the primary sort of fund deployment strategy that we have is again sort of three parts. One, as we are expanding internationally, we have opened our offices. So we have our offices in Japan, we have our offices in UK, we have an office in Australia as well, which is fairly recent. So we are expanding the teams internationally. The reason is, see, it's a business where you need to have those designs, have those relations as well built in, because you are talking about hundreds and thousand dollars worth of orders. So that constant engagement is required in this sort of industry that we are in. So that was one, to expand internationally, which has been one primary focus. Second was also to expand our supply base in multiple clusters. So India has been divided into pockets of capabilities, where Bangalore is a hub for denim manufacturing, Ludhiana is a hub for your winter wears, active wear, the north part, Jaipur, Delhi, these are more into woven garments. And south of India, Tirupur is primarily into knitswear, your hoodies, t-shirts, joggers, all of those. So expanding into different supply clusters in order to expand our product offerings and become a one-stop shop in not just few categories, but all the categories as we grow along. And third and the most important is to build those tech. We are in a very heavy ops industry. We need to build technologies which not just help us become more proactive, but also have those predictive and generative uh, ideas and tools to enhance the overall customer experience and ease our operation.
Okay. Can you teach me a bit about how to do international sales? Like you crack these accounts in Japan, which sounds really challenging because there is a language barrier. How do you do global sales?
I think there is a very fair, simple strategy that we have adopted now, which I think is quite effective. The first is to get entry into the market. Uh, and what we have sort of learned, the best way to get an entry into market in not just apparels but any B2B space is there are a lot of expos that happen internationally where there is potential customers, brands meeting with potential manufacturers, suppliers. So once you get into that expo, that's your, let's say, first entry point to build those first few connects to start or get things moving, where people are interested to work with you. That's why they have come to the whole pavilion. And every in these expos, it's divided country wise. It's the China pavilion, it's the India pavilion, and so on and so forth. So that's, I think, the first entry point. The second is once you have a fair bit of understanding in that geography, a local presence is very much important. As you rightly mentioned, both of us don't speak Japanese. So we hired local Japanese folks, had a local presence there so that that customer relationship building becomes more seamless. They can talk in the same language, they can meet on a frequent basis rather than us flying from one country to another country to meet. It's ineffective and takes a lot of time as well. And then third is constant engagement in our situation through designs, but in any B2B industry would be through that key defining product. And
Hmm.
then you build an anchor client, you take that client as your model that if we solve the problem of this client, there will be hundreds of these in the market. So just sort of then get your head down and solve this problems that come across for the client's life cycle of that product or any service that they want.
And how do you hire local guys? You look for someone who's already worked in a buying house who would understand the language, how to speak to them, what jargons are used, and already have some relationships also, I guess. Is that what you would look for, or like?
Yeah, so we look at people who are in the industry so that they have that warm connects as well and they understand the space because see they are the face of your company in that geography
Hmm.
and you can sort of get that through multiple ways. It is if you are in the market going through these expos also create a lot of connects. Then there are a lot of agencies that you get to know who are actually for helping finding these international folks to represent you. And once you have those one or two entries, and then it's networking, networking, networking. Go in, talk to people, you'll find someone, and then just uh, keep on going with that.
Hmm. Okay. What is it that you are personally most involved in? Like, where does the bulk of your time go?
So, if I tell you the split of responsibilities that me and Ritesh, my co-founder, have, I look after the demand part, which is marketing and sales and the product and tech. He looks after the supply chain operations part. So as now we are in the plans or the works of expanding globally, growing, my time goes specifically into meeting, setting up these new locations, offices, building those businesses, speaking to the customer, have a strategic alignment, and that takes most of the time. And one thing that I personally sort of enjoy as well is the product and tech, how I can make this less human, uh, or reduce the human touch out of it. So product and tech is the second main vertical where my time sort of goes.
Okay, okay. Let me end with this. What for somebody who wants to start a business in 2025? What do you think are, with your knowledge of your industry, what do you think are interesting opportunities for people to explore?
I think, as you rightly said, that idea is a commodity, execution is what matters. So I think the first sort of advice I would like to give is, if you want to start something, then start doing it. I think there is no other way about it. And I sort of see it as well. See, two of the biggest companies that we had, Flipkart, Ola, the first early movers in start. See, Flipkart was, the idea was Amazon, it was a commodity.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was the execution. Ola, Uber was already in the market. These are the two major companies that have actually been the godfathers of the Indian startup ecosystem. So, idea is always a commodity, and there is every space which is exciting. And instead of waiting for the opportunity to find the right space, right idea, I think it's the most important thing is to get on with it and start doing it. Fortunately, we are in a country like India where the next decade or the coming few decades is going to be golden for us. There is great opportunity in local market, in local supply. So the anything that anyone picks, I think there is a gold mine to explode that.
I'm going to say something controversial. I feel like the Zyod idea and the Fashions idea are not that different. Are you executing better?
I think I would like to say it's a multiplayer market. So there is opportunity for everyone and anyone who wants to do it. No brand would want to work with just one Zyod or one fashion Za. So there will be many players, and the best thing is with ideas like this and companies like this, we are actually empowering the Indian ecosystem, and I think that's the major focus to bring India at the forefront of apparel manufacturing supply chain.
Ah, okay. This is not a winner take all market. There will always be, eh, there is enough opportunity here for multiple large businesses to coexist. Okay, okay, okay. Interesting. Why did you name it Zyod? It's such a hard name.
So I think my personal preference uh, was always four letters. So me and Ritesh, we like smaller words. So UCOM for that matter were four letter.
Ah, okay.
Zyod is again four letters. So
Mm.
our idea was we wanted to create something which sounds futuristic. See, Zyod has the ring to it.
And
And
you know that Z, like Zomato has
Z
kind
gives
of
that.
made Z fashionable, right? Like,
So
uh,
that was one primary sort of factor. And one more thing, we wanted to create that global company. And Zyod has just two pronunciations, Zyod or Zyod, across all the global languages. So we wanted to have a name which is easy to uh, say in any major language and has that catchy vibe to it where Zyod, ZYOD, you can easily sort of communicate and it sticks. Even if people
right.
say Zoid, Zoyad, Zeod,
Right.
people
Yeah.
know it's ZYOD.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Ankit. It was a real pleasure.